Hello everyone, and welcome to Earth 2150 Escape from the Blue Planet with your host Walter Richards from DaGameTrain. So here we are at last. I mentioned this game in Machines Wired for War playthrough, and I said that this is miles better than Machines Wired for War in terms of the campaign. In terms of skirmish, it's highly debatable, I would say, but in terms of campaign, it's miles better. Yes. So let's get straight to it, right? This game is very straightforward when you first turn it on. In fact, it doesn't have an intro. You just turn it on and this is what you get right away. Just a fucking menu. You get to choose one of your factions, which will start the campaign. Then there's multiplayer, skirmish and whatnot. No settings to choose from here. Like, you can't change your settings here. You have to change them in the game itself, not in the main menu. Of course, before you start the game, provided you're using this Steam version like I am, you can change the graphical settings. Which I did. They're playing in fucking 1080p. Hells yeah. Before we continue, I'm gonna put up some more fucking pictures and explain the factions quickly. Because after all, one of the viewers, I kind of find his name funky. I don't even want to pronounce it actually. It's a very funky name. But he knows that I'm talking about him, so that's all that matters. He asked, what faction shall I be playing as? And I said it's a secret. Now, no more secrets. We're gonna finally find out who we're gonna play with. The decision behind choosing this faction was a very difficult one actually. Because, first of all, this game, it only has one actual campaign, which all three factions do from their particular angle. So it doesn't matter who you choose, you're still gonna do practically the same missions. It's just what kind of technologies would you prefer to use? And I decided at first, a very long time ago, to go with Lunar Corporation. But recently I thought, this isn't gonna work out because that's not what the first time player is gonna take. So I decided that I'll be playing as the Eurasian Dynasty. Hells yeah. So yeah, about those factions, by the way. The Eurasian Dynasty is pretty much the main force of Europe and Asia combined, controlled by a Khan and a Tsar, I believe. They use the technologies that are commonly found today, which are considered old and outdated in the game, because it is the year 2150, not 2015. Which is funny, if you mix up the numbers, it still comes out as 2015 or 2150. Coincidence? The United Civilized States is practically all of the Americas. The North America, the South America, Canada, the entire continent, basically. And it's controlled by a president whom I can't remember exactly, but I believe he is elected by a lottery that happens every year or something like that. And he is more of a figurehead rather than a leader. Most of the work is done by the supercomputer Golan, who might as well be considered as the real leader of the United Civilized States. Not only that, but the entire United Civilized States are reliant on robots and computers after the war, which we'll talk about soon. So yeah, basically most of everything is done by robots and computers in America. People are mostly too fat to even walk. But if you play as the United Civilized States, you will control the president, Whereas with Eurasian Dynasty you will be playing as one of the commanders. And then there's Lunar Corporation, which was supposed to be the faction we were supposed to play with this time around, but later. They are basically Japan, as I like to refer to them, because the entire corporation is ruled by none other than women, who want to benefit all of mankind with research and science. And that's exactly what they do. They are the most technologically advanced corporation out there. They even live on the moon, hence Lunar Corporation. They have all kinds of cool shit. Electro cannons, sound wave cannons, fucking anti-gravity propulsion, superior recycling, solar energy. They are the best when it comes to being efficient and advanced. However, they're not very good at warfare, whereas the other two factions are all about it. So yeah, I'm gonna play as the Eurasian Dynasty in this game. In other games, I will be playing as all of the factions, so don't worry, you will get to see the mechs of United Civilized States and the fat girls of Lunar Corporation. But I don't mean the fat girls as in actual fat girls. There's a kind of a tank type like that. Oh, who cares? Anyway. Normally a first time player will choose the Eurasian Dynasty because of a very simple reason. It's all the way at the top. It's the first choice to take, so why the fuck not? It also looks interesting, like the name itself already implies glory. Eurasian Dynasty. Hells yeah! So that's exactly what they're gonna do. It's also the easiest one to learn the game with. Other factions have their own specific differences. While they're not particularly big, they can be the thing that breaks or makes your game. Like it did for me. Let's do a couple of missions before I fuck off and finish uploading that last Machines Wired for War video. Click on the Eurasian Dynasty and then you will be granted a list of players. I already had one of my players because I played this already. I beaten it, so I know how the fuck I should work. But first let me make sure, yes, the game train is selected. Once you get your player set up, you are presented this fine menu. You can either play the tutorial, but I suggest not to. You can check out the movies, but you won't find any, I believe. No, there's only one at the moment. You need to unlock more as you move along. And then you can either load or save a game. We don't have any games to load because most of my save files are on the other profile. So we'll just start the game.
New resource field located.
This is where everything begins. During the last war, Earth's orbit around the Sun became unstable. Our planet is racing towards the Sun. We are facing a global catastrophe. Let me tell you a bit more about that. You see, the story is basically like this. ED and UCS were beating the shit out of each other until ED decided, let's use one of these nukes that we've never tested before and throw one at the North Pole and see what happens, cause UCS had a base there. So we did that, and the fucking thing was so powerful, Earth's orbit has been shaken up. It's fucked. It is actually flying towards the Sun, and you got about a year to build an evacuation fleet, like it says right here actually. We have started a project called Exodus. The aim of this project is to construct an evacuation fleet which will save all inhabitants of our state. Now why can't these people team up? Like why can't these factions team up? Very simple. There are not enough resources to save everyone. Therefore you choose who you will represent and who you will try to save. I took ED, but you already know why. In phase 1, we must construct a space dock in orbit. The evacuation will take place here. Phase 2 will see the development and construction of the evacuation fleet itself. To complete the project in time, we need immense quantities of raw materials. Your absolute top priority for the coming months is to guarantee the delivery of these vital materials. But first, you must ensure that everything runs smoothly in our main base. Then you can commence with the first mission. I wish you success, my son. Signed, Vladimir II. And here are our goals. You must meet all of these goals in order to win. Should you fail, well, you blow up along with the entire planet. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you have to transfer 1,000,000 credits for the project. Every time you deliver a specific amount of credits, one of the goals will be ticked off and considered complete. So don't worry about them, you just have to deliver resources. You will be able to check here on your status every time, even inside missions. Controls are pretty basic for a strategy game. You use the arrow keys to... oh, of course. Every time... holy shit, that really threw me off. Sorry, I just recently woke up. You use the arrow keys to move the camera around, but you can use the mouse too. It gives a less choppy transition, but using the mouse may prove annoying, so you can use the arrow keys as well. Of course, you can use both the arrow keys and the mouse to speed up the process, or you can just click on the minimap to snap view, but we'll get to that later. The first mission in the campaign is now available. You can select it by clicking on the globe and choosing your mission. Yes. In the campaign, each side has a main base area. You can move units and resources between the mission area and main base. Well, basically it says everything that I'm about to say anyway, so if you want you can read this, if not, well, fuck it, I'll explain it anyway. Now let's pause the game. Pausing the game works a bit differently than you think. It's not the letter P or the pause button, it's the numlock, which at first you'll find to be weird, but later on you'll get used to it, I think. At least that's what I found, because using numlock as a pause button is actually not that bad. You will always be able to know when you're paused and when you're not, because of their flashy light. When the numlock is on, you are unpaused. You zoom in and out with page up and down keys, which is later on changed to be the mouse wheel. For now, the mouse wheel changes the orientation of your camera from zenith view to a slanted view. Everything else you need to know we'll figure out on our way. The message box that I closed recently also suggested something about the main base, so let me explain that to you while we take care of some basic needs. Let me check on research. Nothing here. Okay. Basically this. Okay, so we have less than a year. This is our main base. We don't have to worry about the protection of this place for the most part, but it does have a very specific building, the spaceport. This is a very important building because this is where you will store the necessary resources for the Project Exodus. We also have the ability to build things around here, like extra production centers, to be able to reinforce our would-be armies. Now I say would-be because we don't really have anything right now. Plus we don't really have a need for any particular army. But this is where you will get to reinforce your armies and store them for other missions. This base is basically a permanent base. You will always have this base. You will always be able to access it even when you're in a mission. In fact, you will have to do that sometimes to get reinforcements. This is the heart of your operation. How you will take care of it depends entirely on you. Let us begin a mission. But first, this is Ukraine. Not the country, but damn a helicopter. This is our transport. Make sure it is never destroyed, or else you will have a hard time moving your troops around. We got some troops right now. We got some Pamirs. TT-100 Pamirs with cannons. How about we take them into the helicopter and see if they can be of any use. In the top you will see your days remaining counter. If it ever hits 0, you're dead. You will also notice something very interesting that I find very cool actually. Look at the entire world right now. It's a fucking ice age. And you gotta keep this in mind because this is kind of important. The weather in this game is very important because certain enemies, particularly Lunar Corporation, may have weapons which can manipulate weather. In other cases, weather is affecting your unit's performance. If it's a shitty weather like a blizzard or a storm, you will notice that your units have a much harder time hitting others and even detecting them. So keep that in mind. And yes, you're not the only one trying to build this evacuation fleet as seen by these icons. You can't really click on them, they just show the locations of the other faction evacuation fleets. So yeah, well actually Lunar Corporation is pretty close to Japan, if not on Japan. No wait, Japan's over here. It's in Indonesia? That's weird. Anyway, we have to go to Ural Mountains. We have to construct a base, extract deposits of raw minerals, and make them available for our base. No information available on the enemies. It's very likely that we won't have any. The massive amount of raw material which we need makes it necessary for us to develop new mining sectors. One of these sectors is located in the western foothills of the Ural Mountains. Let's go here. This is my favorite part.
The next 24 hours will bring heavy cloud cover. Temperatures will reach -50 degrees during the day and fall to -90 at night. A light breeze will come from the south. Low pressure from the east will result in snowstorms. You are forbidden to leave your bunkers during the storm.
The weather report here will always remind you of how shitty the world is. Right now, did you hear it? -90 degrees at night. Holy fucking shit! How do people survive? Anyway, message from headquarters, confidential. Our raw material needs for Project Exodus are enormous. This means it is imperative that we develop new mining sectors. One of these sectors is located in the western foothills of the Ural Mountains. Yes. We have to locate resources, which are to the west. Construct a mine and a transport base. The transport base will automatically send resources to the spaceport. Once we got all that set up, we have to send at least 20,000 credits to the spaceport. We have to they also suggest some strategies here for us. This is useful because it can contain some very useful hints. At the moment though, it just basically says get to the place and build some shit. Then get some units to show up. In the first mission we start with a builder known as Gruz and 2 TT-100 Pamirs. A very basic escort. If you were attacked by any reasonable army, we would be fucking dead in no time. This game really wants you to be efficient with your resources. Kinda like Ground Control 2, but in this case, the resources are not exactly unlimited. But the thing is, units are quite expensive and well, how do I put this? Resources aren't particularly hard to come by, they're not entirely unlimited. Like there's a finite amount of resources, but units are not particularly cheap. Buildings are not particularly cheap. And even if they were, you have another problem. You have to manage your resources accordingly so that you don't lose too much resources to just surviving. You have to send resources to get your evacuation fleet going. So you have to manage your resources. You have to make sure that you don't build what is not necessary. And for God's sake, you also gotta make sure that your armies don't get blown the fuck out. Because if they do, well, it's gonna be very interesting, to say the least. It's gonna be very interesting to see how you'll survive. I probably didn't make a tiny bit of sense, but I think you'll understand eventually. Basically what I'm trying to say is you gotta manage your resources, because you don't have a lot. In the more intensive missions, I will be giving myself more money through the use of cheats, but that's only to avoid bothering you with the unnecessary details of resource management. Just like in Machines Wired for War, we don't need to see how resources are received here. We just need to know how it's done. Because if you have to bother with fucking resources all the fucking time, well, you can be sure that these playthroughs of Earth 2150 will take a lot of fucking time. It's this one that needs power. This is where ED gets a bit interesting. Each faction has its own specific method of power management. ED is very traditional. Put a power plant somewhere close to the buildings to give them power. If you press F9, you will see the electrical grid. The green thunderbolts indicate the areas which are well fed with electricity. The areas which don't have anything mean that they ain't got no feed. With other factions, mainly UCS, you will see that they also have some blue thunderbolts. In the case of UCS, blue thunderbolts mean that it's not enough electricity to feed a building, but it's enough to build a transmitter. Because in the case of UCS, they use wireless electricity. They have power plants like ED, but you have to use wireless transmitters to send electricity around the base. Which is kinda cool actually. But I'll explain more of that once you actually get to work on UCS, which is probably gonna be the next game. I do also like the small details that this game has. Like, look at this. These tanks have been sitting around here for a while and snow has already covered them up. Much like these buildings. You don't see that happen in a lot of strategy games and I don't know why. Why aren't we delivering? Alright, this should do the trick. We have about 30,000 credits available from this mine. If we can gather all of it, it'll definitely boost our efforts. However, we gotta be careful. We might get attacked. It's a very peaceful mission right now. And the music in this game, I really like it. Especially for ED. They have a lot of kind of Soviet-ish music. What about environmental sounds too? Like the music is definitely inspired by the old days, the fucking Soviet Russian shit. And I really like the music because it also has its own little spin, so it doesn't sound completely outdated. Now, let's move these guys up here. There's a good reason why this bridge is here. I don't know if it's because we'll get attacked, but I do know one thing. You can build bridges around here. In fact, you can do a lot of useful shit. Let's have a look at our builder. Here you are. The builder has 4 build tabs. All of them are, well, categorized by the function. The first one is production, the second is economy, the third is defense, and the fourth is, well, other things. In the production tab we currently only see the power plant, but if we go back to our base and click on this guy, we can see other things like the vehicle and weapons production centers, the supply depots, which we'll get to later. Alright, better turn off the grid. In the economy we'll find mines and refineries, which you will not see in the skirmish modes, because they don't want you to use them, mostly. In the defense tab we will see, well, maybe we'll see it here too. Yeah, well, normally you'll also see some towers, but the most primary function of a builder here is to build fortifications. From this tab you can build walls, you can build bridges, you can build tunnels. Yes, you can dig tunnels. You can flatten terrain, you can dig trenches. In fact, how about we dig a trench? The terraforming capabilities in this game are simply amazing. And digging trenches is actually not a bad idea. You see, once you dig out this trench, enemies won't be able to just drive through. They will have to find a way around, because they will get stuck in the trench. And they are smart enough to know that. They won't ever try to drive in. This is like a makeshift wall. A very cheap wall. In fact, it's dirt cheap. It's just digging up some dirt. Of course, certain factions will be able to do these kind of operations faster. In the case of ED, they have the most optimal speed. The fastest diggers are Lunar Corporation, LC for short, but I don't think they have access to tunnel borers right now. The slowest are UCS. I strongly discourage doing any kind of digging with the UCS. They really suck at that, but they have their shortcomings. What's the fucking word I'm looking for? Compensated, yeah. They have their shortcomings compensated for in different places. Look at this. He's digging up a good old trench. I like that. Graphics, as you can already tell, are not very impressive, but you have to keep in mind this game was made 15 years ago. Yes, it was released in the year 2000, or at least 2001, I'm not entirely sure. And was released by, well, what was it developed by? A Reality Pump, I believe? You can always check on this. I have my phone and everything. And it's one of the first fully 3D strategy games. It has won quite a bit of rewards too, for that matter, which is amazing. I've seen the rewards and, well, what can I say? It's just amazing how the fucking thing is just so impressive. Ah yes, here we go. Initial release date is May 22nd, 2000. Developers are Topware Interactive, Zuxess Entertainment, and Reality Pump Studios. I'm not exactly sure about the second one. I heard there was some kind of a problematic history with them, but I might be mistaken. Right, how about it? No, not like that. Naturally, since we dug out a trench, we don't really have a way to get out of a trench. Gotta do something about that. Which is why we got the flatten terrain tool. This'll flatten the terrain good enough for our good old friend to get out. Well, hopefully. Or maybe he'll just find a different route. Or maybe not. Shit. He got stuck. We keep breaking some kind of bottles or something, I don't get it.